Scott, we're on the term impact, and I'd like you to speak to that in relation to the Good Place organization.
Yeah, so the longer phrase that I like to use is community impact. One of the titles in the Utopia book is Finding Value. The concept is when you have a business, you're supposed to create value. What values are you supposed to create? So the go-to answer is return on shareholder investment. And a business is supposed to create that value. In the 60s and 70s, Milton Friedman said, maybe in the 50s, but Milton Friedman said, the only thing that a business is supposed to do, is morally obligated to do, is to return a profit on shareholder investment. Everything else is nice, but it doesn't really matter as long as you're creating profit. And the whole concept of the free hand of the market, invisible hand of the market, that if you allow free markets to operate with people making profit, that all needs will be met. And I think we have plenty of evidence that that's not the case. So there's two other ways that our labor is supposed to create value. One is, and we talk about this a lot as a means of grace, as we engage in labor, that's an instrument that God uses to build us up in who we can be, which is conformed to the image of Christ. The other thing is our labor is also supposed to benefit people other than just us. And that's the community impact aspect of it. Paul has this great line, look not to your own interest, but also to the interest of others. And that's how our work should be. You say, well, we're obviously satisfying customers, or else we wouldn't be making any money. That might be true, but God has got a vision for the world where everybody does well, and is our work contributing to that? And so part of the formulation of your business needs to be, how does the work that we do make the community outside of the group of people working together in our organization, how does our work make life better for the larger community? And that's the community impact.
So a company might say, well, we do have a philanthropic arm. We give to United Way, we give to Habitat for Humanity, we give, and you can pick, 10, 15 large national organizations, okay? Mm-hmm. So what is that meaning, this prerogative of impact?
Yeah, there's always needs, apparently, that will only be met through somebody donating money or volunteering their time. But the world cannot become the place that God intends for it to be for us, which is for our benefit, if the work that we do primarily makes money. It's not work that's intended to make the larger community better. It's not intended to make life better for people other than our customers who pay us. It can't happen. You can't donate or volunteer your way into that world. The work that we do by which we earn our living has to be work that builds the shalom that God describes that we can have. There's a text in the Utopia book called Building a Good Place in a Nonprofit Dilemma, which does the arithmetic that says donations and volunteer time cannot build up a good place. The work by which we earn a living has to also make the world the kind of place we want it to be, which is the vision that God gives us of a good place.
So then someone might say, well, one, we don't necessarily know how to meet the needs in our immediate community. And two, isn't this sort of like, the poor you shall always have with you. You help one person and there are 10 others that you're not going to help. What's the fallacy of the thinking there?
So that line, which gets used a lot in Christian circles, for sure, the poor you have with you always, Jesus did not make up that phrase. He's quoting from Leviticus. in Leviticus, God gives us a vision of how our labor, our economic activities should operate. And basically, it's everyone has a job that can support themselves and their family. And if anybody loses their job, everyone else's job is to get them back into a job where their work can support their family. And until they do, we need to support them. And as God describes what I like to call the promised land economy, he says, if you do this, there will be no poor in your land. But then at the end of the passage, he says, but you're always going to have the poor with you. Implication, you're not going to live out this economy that I'm giving you. And who did Jesus say that to? That's the context of that gets lost. When the woman brought the alabaster box of the ointment and broke it and put the ointment on Jesus' feet before the crucifixion, Judas said, that's worth a month's wages, or whatever it was. It was a large sum of money. She should have sold that and given the money to the poor. And then there's a parenthetical statement. Judas said this because he kept the money bag for the disciples, and he dipped into it and took money out of it. So when he said, this should be sold and the money given to the poor, Jesus looked at him and said, Judas, the poor you have with you always. Implication being, you know why you have the poor with you always, because you're not living the economy that God gave us. Jesus knew where that passage came from. And he's making a point to Judas, you are benefiting yourself at the expense of others, instead of making sure that everyone's okay. To me, that's the bottom line of the community that God promises us that he will give us by his grace as we cooperate with God. There's a community where everyone's okay. And our question needs to be, is everyone okay? And if not, what can we do to change that?
So then, let me rephrase this. I'm concerned about, litter on the planet.
Mm-hmm.
And when I look at something on the floor and I pick it up and throw it in the trash can, mm-hmm. I'm under no illusion that I'm solving the pollution problem. Instead, it's a defensive act for me to keep myself tender to the issue. Mm-hmm. I don't want to get so inured to the impossibility of me actually making a long-term solution, mm-hmm. that I don't do anything. So in a sense, it's not really about the earth anymore. It's about my state of heart, my tenderness towards the issue.
Uh-huh.
And
so that's awesome. Who throws litter? Who throws litter out? There's a question that I've never really heard addressed. My belief is people throw litter out who don't feel like they're part of the system that everyone else is part of, that they benefit. People who feel they are left out, everyone else is benefiting and they're not. And I believe that in a heathen economy, which is what we have in the United States, we don't have a godly economy, we have a heathen economy. Massive amounts of people are left out, and no one feels obligated to figure out how to include them. It's like, well, why don't they just get a job? That's the line. Somebody who's very well known, won't mention his name, is on video, people saying, what about providing food to children and families in poverty? His response was, it's not our job to feed them. Why don't they just get a job? They should just get a job. And it's such an ignorant statement.
Yeah, let's move a little bit towards this. If you want to talk a little bit on it, it'd be great. But we are moving into an era where entry-level jobs are going to be squeezed more and more because of AI, automation, strong software, globalization, all sorts of things, outsourcing. So what do you do with someone who wants to work, but there really is not a job out there for them?
So take your illustration of the litter. No one of us can change the world so that people don't litter. And I would say lots of us working together are not going to change the world so that there's no litter anymore. What you described is, I'm calling it, a heathen economy. That's not a godly economy. And the Good Place organization is a group of people who say, we are going to seek the grace to live out a godly economy in the way that we work. And Scripture is clear from the early history of Israel through to the church that God's looking for a group of His people to live the way God describes, so that the rest of the people who are not interested in living the way God counsels us to live will look at us living that out and go, I would like to be like that. Isaiah 2, teach me to walk in the ways of the Lord. And if we can live out an economy where we demonstrate we care about people who are being left out by the heathen economy, and we use our powers of entrepreneurship to figure out how to engage in economic activities that are economically viable, that can employ people, that's what we're looking for.
Thank you, Scott.